Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on commencement preparation for Tulane's commencement this coming May. We are happy to have you join us, and we've got information here compiled for you that we hope will be helpful in planning this visit to campus to celebrate this great milestone. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that we do not know yet who the commencement speaker will be. I know a lot of you are waiting for that, but since I have all of your emails, as soon as I hear who the commencement speaker will be, I'll send you an update. So again, you all probably know me. I'm Penny Wyatt. I'm the Director of Parent Programs in the Division of Student Affairs at Tulane. And I have a couple of colleagues here with me who are going to help with this presentation tonight. First is Kelly Venable Carroll, who is from University Services. And one of Kelly's many distinctions is that she has been a volunteer with our commencement exercises since 1999. So she's got a lot of familiarity with how everything runs. And then one of her colleagues, Kate Simon, is here to also talk with you about a lot of the things that the University Services Department does to help students prepare for commencement. And so we'll give you some background about how everything works and some guidance for how to navigate through that weekend, since there are a couple of different ceremonies that you'll want to attend, some exciting things to do just to celebrate, and we want to help make sure that that visit goes smoothly for you and your family. Before we get into all of the content, I want to just remind you of a couple of things that we do to keep things rolling along in our webinars. So one is that we ask you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We've tried to anticipate as many of those questions as possible and incorporate that content into the webinar, but you will have a chance to type in your questions. So you are not mic'd, but you can type in your questions and we'll take those at the end. One other thing I like to do is just to ask if everyone is able to hear. So you've got a little icon on your screen that looks like a hand. So if you use that to raise your hand, you'll let me know that you are hearing the audio. So I see some hands going up, so that's reassuring. It's good to know. I will tell you that if you feel like the volume is not quite strong enough, then that is something you adjust on your end. So you can use the controls on your computer to increase your volume. So keep that in mind. And another thing that we offer with these webinars is that I will send you, after the webinar tonight, I'll send you a PDF of these slides so that you don't have to worry too much about taking notes while you're listening this evening and watching everything. And so you should have that this evening, not long after we close the webinar. And then a link to the combined audio video file will be on our website, parents.tulane.edu, probably by Friday. So if you'll give us a day to convert that and post it to our website, you'll be able to see the whole thing again if you need to. So I think that kind of gives you the lay of the land. So we'll get started. And I guess I'd like to ask one other question, if you would raise your hand. How many of you already have your hotel reservations booked for this event, for this visit? Because if you haven't already, we want to make sure we really encourage you to do that, and we'll give you some more details about that in just a minute. So I hope that all of you are planning to attend, because our ceremony is really something special. We had a staff member here who had worked for over 30 years at another university, and he was our interim vice president for student affairs, and he said it was one of the most unique and celebratory kinds of commencement exercises he'd ever seen. And I think he described it as this great big party where there just happened to be a commencement ceremony happening in the midst of it. So we definitely think that it's something special, and we want you to be able to make the most of that weekend. So these are the topics that we're going to cover tonight. The first is Grad Fest, which is an event for students. And then we'll tell you a little bit about lodging and rental car resources to help you with your weekend. We'll go over the schedule of the commencement weekend events. We'll also talk with you about how to help your student wrap up their time here at Tulane, whether they're on campus, or give a couple of tips for that if they're living off campus. And then we also want you to know about how this relationship with Tulane can extend beyond graduation for your students. So we're going to tell you about some Alumni Association resources for new graduates, and then we'll take your questions. So I'm going to turn things over to my colleagues here, especially to Kate, to start us off with information about Grad Fest.
Okay, so as Penny said, we're going to kick it off with Grad Fest. Grad Fest is actually next week. It's Wednesday and Thursday, and it's on the second floor of the LBC. And we really encourage you to encourage your students to come, because this is when they will get to do really anything that they need to do to prepare for graduation. They'll be able to buy their cap and gowns, which are necessary for them to walk. They'll be able to buy their a diploma frame if they want. Penny, if you'd like to advance. Thank you. You can order your Tulane ring, and this is actually the last chance that you'll be able to order that to have it in time for graduation. They can order announcements. They can even take a free graduation portrait proof with a professional photographer, and we will have one makeup day later in the month, but this really is their best opportunity to sit for that. We will also have representatives from Alumni Relations to give your student a little more information about how to be involved with Tulane after graduation. So on this slide you can see we have kind of the basic pricing for caps and gowns for bachelor's students who are receiving their bachelor's degrees. As you can see, the whole thing costs about $63, and that's not including tax. They'll purchase this through the bookstore rep at Grad Fest on that day, and they'll be able to buy it and take it home, and then they're done with it until commencement. And as I said earlier, Tulane caps and gowns are required to walk in commencement. They have to have that on when they arrive at the Superdome on May 14th. And what's also really important is that their tassel is the right color. And our bookstore reps are the only people who are going to know what color tassel your student needs to be wearing for their degree. And so as you can see, now we're going to talk a little bit about the Tulane ring. And as I said, Grad Fest is the last chance that your student will have to order a ring in time for graduation. We will have a rep from Balfour who makes our rings at Grad Fest, and they will have styles and medals and samples for your students to actually look at and try on while they're there. The prices start at $380 and go up from there depending on your style and depending on the medal that they choose. You can click on our website there to see a little bit more about those products and those choices. You can also go online and order or call Balfour yourself and order if you want to surprise your student with a ring for graduation. It's a great gift for graduating students. We will also have representatives selling diploma frames at Grad Fest. There are several styles available. Prices range from $155 to $240 depending on the style of frame. Your student can purchase the frame right there or have it shipped to them at a later date. And we will have representatives from our two framing partners, Churchill Classics and Framing Success, at Grad Fest, and they will have samples of the frames so that your student can see exactly what they're looking at. And we also have that link down there at the bottom if you want to go online and see those options before your student gets to Grad Fest and has to make their decision. We will also have a rep from Balfour selling personalized graduation announcements at Grad Fest. We recommend that your student actually orders them at Grad Fest with that rep to make sure that the announcement has the right name, their school, their major, the date, that kind of thing. Most of you should have already received a mailing by now with an actual sample of the announcement in the envelope so that you can see it. They're beautiful, and we spend a lot of time working on these. We have had a few questions about those from parents, and just so you know, that one that you received in the envelope with the rest of the Grad Fest mailings, that's just a blank sample. When your student actually orders theirs, it'll have their name, it'll be completely personalized. And there at that link on the Grad Fest website, we have the announcement pricing. So you'll be able to see all your options, the number of announcements, that kind of thing that your student has the option to order at Grad Fest. You can also order these online, but as we've said, we recommend that your student actually does it on site at Grad Fest with the Balfour representative. And at Grad Fest, your student will also have the opportunity to take a cap and gown portrait. Our partner, Candid Campus Photography, will take those proofs at Grad Fest. So Candid Campus will provide the cap and the gown, so your student doesn't have to already have that. They'll provide shirts and ties for men who might not bring their own. If your student does want to take a cap and gown portrait, just make sure that they know to arrive properly groomed and dressed for the portrait. And how this works is the sitting for the proof is actually free. Your student won't have to pay anything to sit for the picture. And within 7 to 10 business days after Grad Fest, your student will receive an email with a link to view their proof online. And at that point, you and your student can decide if you want to order pictures, how many you want to order, and all of the ordering and payment will go through the website. And if your student can't attend Grad Fest, it's okay. We understand that not everybody can make it and not everyone's on campus during Wednesday and Thursday of next week. But they can head to our website. It's gradfest.tulane.edu for detailed information. And actually right after Grad Fest, we're going to have a special page just for students who weren't able to attend. If your student can't come, they can still purchase their cap and gown in the bookstore or by calling the Uptown Bookstore. We will have photo retakes on April 5th with Candid Campus just in case they weren't able to get their photo proof during Grad Fest. You can order your announcements online at balfour.com or over the phone, and you can also order your Tulane ring online or over the phone. And now we're going to talk a little bit about lodging and rental car resources. We have relationships with many hotels and bed and breakfasts in the area, and we have discounted rates with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. At those links on the screen right now, you can click and see all of the hotels and bed and breakfasts in the area that we do have relationships with, and also the rental car options with Enterprise. As Penny said, we hope that you have made your reservations, or you're planning on making them very soon. There are lots of conferences and conventions in New Orleans all the time, and especially during commencement. So if, just plan to book your lodging as soon as you can. If you have any issues, if you feel like you just cannot find a room in New Orleans, please contact our office, and we're going to help you out any way that we can.
I want to just check that people can hear the audio. If you'll raise your hands again. I don't know if our internet connection is being a little spotty, so if you'll just let me know if you can hear, that's helpful. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so we wanted to just go through the schedule and give you an idea of how this will go. And this is all on the website, but we want to just walk you through a little bit of it and just kind of provide some context for that. So a lot of parents will want to arrive by Friday in time to participate in a couple of special events. So one of the first of those is the Newcomb-Tulane College Senior Awards Ceremony. If you have an invitation to that, if your student's included in that, they will get an invitation in late April, and so they'll know about that. So that may be, if you may want to just plan your travel so you would arrive by then if you think that might be something your student would participate in. But for everyone, we really want you to know about the big event called the Wave Goodbye Party. So this takes place from 6 to 8 p.m. on the academic quad between Gibson Hall at the front of campus and Ferret Street. So it's a great big outdoor event, very festival-like atmosphere. And each student gets 7 tickets to that. And if they don't use all of theirs, they can offer tickets to friends. And so they usually kind of swap back and forth between each other depending on the size of the group of guests who are coming to visit them.
And Penny, those tickets will be available online?
Yes, so the students are emailed those. Right. And so they get that in an email later this spring. So that's how they will have that. And they will need to print those out and bring them with them to the event and give those out to you and the other people in your party.
And those 7 tickets include one for the student?
Yes, one is for the student. And so if you think your party's going to be bigger than that, then tell your student to start polling their friends to find out how many of theirs they may not need so they can trade with those. Then the big events are on Saturday the 14th. And the first one is the Unified Commencement Ceremony in the morning, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. And then each of the schools has a separate graduation ceremony. So there are 2 things to go to, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in just a minute. And then on Sunday, that's when the residence halls close at 9 a.m. So if your student is still living on campus, you want to plan within those last few days there and over the weekend to get everything situated so that they can check out on Sunday by 9 in the morning. So a little bit more detail about the Wave Goodbye Party. This is a great opportunity to mix and mingle with your friends, your students' friends, and their families. And it's a real casual atmosphere, and it is outside, so you want to keep that in mind. Wear comfortable clothes for being outside in May. It is not as bad as when you moved your student in August, but it could be humid. It could be a little chilly later in the evening. It could be hot still outside, so just kind of keep that in mind and dress accordingly. So it is outside. It'll be similar to a lot of other kinds of New Orleans festival type things. There'll be live music, and there'll be samplings of classic New Orleans food. There'll be a cash bar available, but think of this as like samplings of different foods, sort of hors d'oeuvre sized samples of everything from snowballs to bread pudding and jambalaya and a lot of different, what was that?
Char-grilled oysters.
Oh, char-grilled oysters, just a little bit of everything. But it may not be dinner necessarily. So it is planned so that you could come to this and kind of get some samples before you go on to dinner later on. So again, wear casual clothes, wear comfortable shoes because you're going to walk a good bit. And then each student gets 7 tickets, and they do need to print them out from their confirmation email in advance and bring those with them printed and show them at the entrance. It's not one of those things where you can just show them on your phone or something. The entrances on either of the main streets, either Ferret or St. Charles, are controlled, and so they have to show those in order to get in. I think one of the great things about this is that you'll be able to meet your students' friends, and they'll have their families with them. So it's just a real, just a nice way to kind of close that circle and meet all those people that have been important to your student while they're here. So the Unified Commencement Ceremony is on Saturday morning at 9. It's in the Superdome. So keep in mind, though, that the students have to be in place by 8 o'clock to line up as they're supposed to, and so that everything fits. Now, at this particular ceremony, they will not cross the stage and have their name called out, but they do have to line up as they're directed. And though they don't go across the stage, there is so much about this ceremony that's very distinctive, very indicative of New Orleans and Tulane. It's got a lot of special touches, so we really wouldn't want you to miss this. So that can be the way you start out your day. It's very festive, but it's still dignified, and so we do want the people in the audience to remember that, and it's certainly memorable. Some other tips to help you navigate through the day is that, I'll repeat what Kate said, the students have to be wearing their official Tulane regalia in order to walk. So they can't come in something else, they can't come with the wrong colors on, they definitely have to be wearing their Tulane regalia. A really good tip that Kelly offered last year was to remind your student to take the robe out of its packaging a few days in advance and hang it so that the wrinkles fall out, but don't iron it. So they don't want to wait until that morning at 7:45 to take it out of its package, or they'll just look like a big wrinkled mess. We also just do want to remind you, they really shouldn't leave at 7:45. You want to leave early enough to get the students to the Superdome. And so they must be there at 8. So make sure they've eaten breakfast at home, or perhaps they'll stay with you in your hotel the night before because you might be closer to the Superdome, but they should do that before they arrive. Again, we say wear comfortable shoes. The Superdome is a really large venue, and you might have to walk a good ways from the parking lot to your entrance or to your seat. So keep that in mind. There will be a free shuttle service that'll run from the Tulane Uptown campus to the Superdome. It'll start at 7, and there is more detailed information about the shuttle on the tulane.edu grads website, and that week you may want to double check that so that you've got the latest details. So if you want to come to campus in the morning and take the shuttle, then you can all do that together.
Yeah. This is Kelly. As somebody who's done this since '99, I would strongly encourage you to come to campus and park in the garage and ride that shuttle. We'll have food service open. We'll have the PJ's coffee shops open so you can grab coffee and pastries or something. And it's just a nice, stress-free ride, because when you try to drive and park at the Dome, you will completely understand what I'm trying to encourage you not to do.
So if you do choose to do that, then parking is cash only at the Dome, and it's been about $15. So we do want you to at least know that you need to bring cash for that if you're going to go that direction. So the parents are not allowed on the Superdome floor. You'll be guided to your seats by ushers. They'll be wearing usually green shirts there. A lot of Tulane staff will be there to help as volunteers. And you can consult the website that week before on which gates parents and students use, because we've got a map of that we'll show you, but you may just want to double check that. There'll be people directing you, but it'll all be on the website as well. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that the bookstore will have Tulane branded items for sale in the Superdome, so that if you want to get that last Tulane sweatshirt or something else like that to take home to your family or as a present for your graduate, then you'll have the opportunity to do that there at the Superdome. So here's a map of the Superdome and where the garages and entrances are. And this is from last year. I think that it'll be the same, but again, it would be good just to double check this in case they decide to change which gate is the student entrance.
It's still gate G as far as I know. But just make sure you and your student are going to have to separate, because we're only going to let students in at gate G. Superdome staff will not let you come in with your student. So say your goodbyes for gate G.
Yeah. The other really important thing about this map is that if you have someone who is using a wheelchair or needs to be wheeled to their space in the Dome, even if they are not going to stay in a wheelchair the whole time, then the gate A is the drop-off zone for that. So we've got some more details to help you if that's the case for your family, but we just want to point this out. Now again, this map is on that website. So you will need to coordinate some of this if you are all going together to the Superdome, and it takes a little bit of planning. And then because it is such a big space, it's really smart to designate ahead of time with everybody in your party where you want to meet when it's all over, because you're going to all be coming in from different ways, but you may want to leave all together, so you want to match up with each other in this really big space. Find where you're going to designate your meetup point after it's all over. So for people who will be needing or using a wheelchair, the wheelchairs are provided in the Superdome, but after the individual's been brought to his or her seat, then they'll be seated, and then that volunteer is going to take that wheelchair to go help other people. So if you need to bring your own wheelchair, please do that. We're going to offer you some resources of rental places in town if you need to do that once you arrive. So the volunteers with green shirts will be waiting at that gate with the wheelchairs. And so probably the best thing for you to do is have at least one person kind of help get that person in your party to the volunteer and go along with them so you know where they're seated, and then make an arrangement with the other people in your party to like call on your cell phone or something so that you can tell them where you are seated, because there will be particular areas for the guests in wheelchairs. So they'll have some and seating that's accessible for those people who will be wheeled there in the chair. And so there are 2 rows in the seating section that's reserved for guests who are mobility impaired. So your other people in your party will be able to sit close to them, but you'll want to have somebody stay with that person from your party. So like mom walks with grandmother who's being wheeled to that area while dad is parking the car or something like that. So you just want to make sure you've got somebody to accompany your person. So again, it's just really important to establish before you get seated, you all get separated, where you're going to meet after the ceremony. So I called last week to double check that these 2 companies are still willing to rent wheelchairs to our Tulane family guests, and they are. So their contact information is there. Now, for both of these, you do need to be aware they're not open on Saturday, so you would have to pick up the equipment before that. And they did say that it's smart to go ahead and start making those reservations as early as possible, even beginning next week, so that they make sure that they've got enough equipment to meet the need. So I gave you the locations and how far they are from campus and their hours and phone numbers there. So then the other thing that your student can participate in, and we strongly recommend, is that they also go to their individual school graduation ceremony. So these are after the unified commencement ceremonies, and we've listed the schedule of all of them there. So when you get the PDF of this, you'll be able to click on those hyperlinks there for each school and see more detailed information. But this is where it requires some planning, and we're going to go through some other slides to just kind of help you think through this. So I know that most of the parents who listen to our webinars are parents of undergraduate students. We're going to focus on those ceremonies, but we'll give you some idea to help you kind of plan how much time you have in between the unified ceremony and your individual one and how you might use that time. So we have a page like this for every one of the undergraduate schools. And so if you look at this, it'll show you what time that school ceremony is and then some guidance about whether you've got time to leave for a lunch break, or if you're not, what kind of things are recommended. And so this will give you some sense of how that will work. So for instance, the unified ceremony is 9 to 11, but they tell you to kind of count on it taking about 30 minutes for everybody to file out. So you really want to consider that as being 9 to 11:30. Well, so the Freeman School of Business ceremony is at 12:30, so you really don't have time to go anywhere. And your student has to get lined up very soon after that. So they really should not leave the dome at all. We would advise that parents stay close to the dome or just stay there. And if you need a little snack or something to tide you over, there are concessions that are sold in the Superdome, but they're definitely stadium snack type concessions like popcorn and hot dogs and nachos, that type of thing. So if you're in this category, then you're probably going to want to plan a late lunch reservation or have some kind of a snack after this and then have your big celebration be a big dinner or something. So again, we're reminding you again, you're not going to be on the Superdome floor, and you need to kind of establish where you're going to meet afterwards. So then the School of Architecture has a different kind of setup. So from 2 to 3:30, they have a reception for students and families back here on campus. And so you'd have from 11:30 until a little before 2. There'll be light food and drinks at that. So if you want to be able to mix and mingle with other students and probably the professors from architecture, then this is your opportunity to do that. So you've got some flexible time because that reception is an hour and a half long, but then the ceremony itself will be in Dixon Hall, which is a little bit a different part of campus from Richardson Memorial, which is the architecture school's building. It is wheelchair accessible, but you'll have to go from one spot to the other, and then that ceremony will happen 4 to 6 p.m. So if you're back on campus, then you can park in the Diebold parking garage, or you might want to park in the Loyola garage, which would be in between those two buildings.
Just so you know, if you decide to take the shuttle in the morning to the dome, the shuttle will take you back to the individual ceremonies. The shuttle service will run all day long, a continuous loop, until the last ceremony has ended. Also, all of our buses are handicap accessible, so if you have somebody who's in a wheelchair, don't worry about taking the shuttle because we can accommodate them.
Great. Okay, so if your student's in the School of Liberal Arts, then their ceremony time begins at 3, so it's 3 to 4:30, and it is in the Superdome. So you've got time for a lunch break. So keep that in mind. I mean, we would certainly recommend that even though you've got a few hours, you may want to try to make reservations that are closer to the CBD, the Central Business District, or the French Quarter, but keep that in mind in terms of how much time that you have. And we strongly recommend if you're going to try to do that, then make reservations in advance somewhere. But the students do have to be back by 2 p.m. in their regalia again as the directions indicate there. So really, again, you've got between about 11:30 and 2 for getting to your lunch spot, eating, and getting back. So then after that particular graduation ceremony at 4:30, there is a light reception in the St. Charles Club Lounge, which is within the Superdome. And that is, again, a chance to mingle with the faculty and administrators from the School of Liberal Arts. So for the School of Science and Engineering, you've got a break again there between the two ceremonies. And so the SSE undergraduate ceremony is at 4 p.m. and it is on campus in the Devlin Field House. That is the big brick building on the corner of McAllister and Ferret. It's where the basketball arena is. So you've got a pretty good lunch break time. And there is a reception that's right before the ceremony. And again, the same parking options are available to you, and you can use the shuttle back and forth if you want. And the Devlin Fieldhouse is wheelchair accessible. The ramp is on the front left corner as you're facing the building from Ferret Street. So there's a ramp there on the side that you can use. So the School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine ceremony is at the Mahalia Jackson Theater for the Performing Arts, which is near Rampart and Basin Street. And so I would look that up in your GPS and see how you would get to that. So again, you've got a pretty good lunchtime break that you can use. And will the shuttles pick people up at that location too?
Typically, they do go to the ceremonies that aren't on the Uptown campus, but I will confirm that and let you know.
Okay. Okay. So that's a little bit. So in a little bit different direction, it's closer to, that's right between, say, the French Quarter and the Treme neighborhood. So it's a little bit over from the Superdome towards the quarter. And then the School of Continuing Studies has their separate ceremony at 2, and it is back on campus in McAllister Auditorium. So McAllister Auditorium just has more limited accessibility for wheelchairs and things. It does have a ramp, but the bathrooms are not easily accessible. So we would suggest that anybody going to that who might have those needs use the either the Goldring Wildenberg building or the LBC, the Lab and Burning Center, which are both close to McAllister Auditorium if you have a guest that's using a wheelchair and needs restrooms. So after all of that celebration is over, we know that there's still some things to do, like, pack up and wrap up and get ready to move. So we wanted to give you a couple of tips about this. So some of those chores that a student has to do include forwarding mail. So if they live on campus, then there is a mail forwarding online form, and the link is right there on the screen. So you'll see that on the PDF, so they can use that so their mail gets forwarded on. And then if they live off campus, they just have to take care of that themselves like anybody else who's living off campus. And there's a change, but we included, just for your convenience, the change of address order online form with the U.S. Postal Service. So don't let them forget mail. And then they probably have a lot of stuff that needs to get from here to somewhere else. So we want to let you know that the FedEx office operation here will have packing and shipping services. And what they do at the end of the school year is set up a satellite operation in the Peterson lobby in the LBC. So they take over this other space on the first floor, and they've got it all really well organized. It's laid out really conveniently. They've got they can weigh the packages there. They've got boxes that they'll sell to students and help them get all of that stuff kind of taken care of. So I think the main thing is that your student just needs to plan ahead during finals and those few days between finals and the commencement ceremonies, and just kind of get their things packed up. If they want to ship them, they can do it right from campus if they want. So the other thing that they'd have to take care of if they live on campus is to make sure that they've got everything ready to check out. And so checkout is at 9 in the morning, so they really do have to get this stuff kind of figured out before Saturday even. So when you arrive, you want to see if they're making progress on that. So if they think about their move out process about 2 or 3 weeks out and coordinate with you and coordinate with their roommates, they'll be a lot more prepared for this. So we got some tips from the folks in the housing office who said that they will need to schedule a checkout appointment with their resident advisor and do a room condition report. And so that is what would signify that they've taken care of all those things. They've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and that also they won't get fined for anything if there are damages that aren't reported or something's not checked out correctly. If they've gone over their room condition report with their RA, then they know exactly how they're leaving that condition, and they would know in advance if something is awry and they'd have to be fined for it. So it's really smart if they'll do that and have that appointment with their RA. Now, they can do an express checkout and just fill out the form and leave their key, but then they're not seeing that with someone else. And so if there is something that the student's forgotten to take care of, then they could be charged for that, and they won't know about that until the bill comes. So you just may want to talk with your student about making time to do that. The other thing they really need to do is to talk with their roommate, because they could be leaving at different times. Your student's roommate might be a junior, and they're going to be gone a week before your student. So they just want to make sure they coordinate and that everybody's responsible for their own parts. And the biggest thing, too, that they need to remember is that the room furniture needs to be all returned to the way it was set up when they moved in. And so they just need to make sure it's clean and that the furniture is the way it was. It's reset to its original configuration. And then everything will go more smoothly, and they won't have to worry about being charged for anything if they take care of those things well. So another note is that the students will receive their diplomas by FedEx. So while they go across the stage and they'll get a diploma cover and they'll get to shake somebody's hand and it will all look very official, the diploma is not actually in there because finals just ended and all of the certification of their number of hours, their course credits and all that takes some time. And so when all that's finished, the diplomas will be shipped about 3 to 4 weeks after commencement, and they'll be shipped to the address that the student indicates on their application for degree. So that application of degree form, is that also something they do at Grad Fest, or they do, with their academic advisor? So that's a step that they also have to take care of this semester to make sure they've applied for that degree, and they fill out that form, and they'll be able to put their address on that. Now, if after that, let's say you move and they're coming to your home, or they get a new job and it's in a different city and they want to have their diploma mailed to a different place, they can change that address, and they do that through Gibson Online, the administrative online portal that they use for everything else, like checking their grades and all kinds of things. So your students are certainly familiar with Gibson Online, but even if their address changes between, say, March and May, they can make that update. So another thing to remember is that when you're here over the weekend, the bookstore will be open most of the day on Saturday from 9 to 5, but it would be closed on Sunday. It's also open Friday, Monday, if you're going to be here both of those days. So the last couple of things we wanted to tell you about are, again, those opportunities for your student to stay connected to Tulane through the Alumni Association. And there's really a lot of good reasons for them to do that. And one is that it's a great way to network with other alumni. And so there is a special mechanism called Tulane Connect that students can use to network with other alumni, either other young, recent alumni or older alumni who can be mentors in their career field, or even connect them to other people once they move to wherever they will be after they graduate. So it's in a format that's really easy for students to use. They can kind of log in using Facebook or LinkedIn, and so it's got that social networking kind of format that students are used to, and it's really good for seeing who other people are and what their interests are, what their background is, and where they are. And then another thing for your student to be aware of is that we have dozens and dozens of alumni clubs all across the country and all across the world. So we showed you those two maps just to get a sense of that. And so your student can get involved with one of these clubs. And there again, it's a really nice thing if they are moving to a new city and they just want a way to, meet some other people who live in that new town, either other young alumni to help them kind of make friends, or it's even a nice way to connect with people of other generations so that they kind of feel like they get to know people who have established families or established careers in that city, or to get to know people outside of their work life. So, they have everything from game watching parties to, of course, we have some very unique things among our Tulane alumni clubs. Almost every single one of them will have a Mardi Gras party every year, and a crawfish boil. They actually ship crawfish from New Orleans in Louisiana to alumni clubs all over the place so that they can have crawfish boils in the spring. So some of them are really, really active. And if there's one that's not all that active and your student is a good organizer, then that's another way for them to get some nice leadership and networking experience. I know a lot of students that I've worked with over the years they've gone in and transformed the club in their area, and it's been another way for them to kind of build some skills and meet people and kind of establish themselves in a new city to take a leadership role in the club or just get involved and meet people. So we certainly want to recommend that. Also, the Alumni Association wants Tulane parents to know that you're also considered a part of the Tulane family, and you can be a part of their activities. And so if you want to go online and sign up to get information about the club in your city, they really welcome you to participate, and it might be something that you'd like to do to keep connected to Tulane. So here's the point where we will take questions. So if you'd like to type in your questions, give us a little bit of time to kind of get situated here, and we'll start going through those. So let's see here. So what time do we think parents should arrive at the Superdome?
I would suggest parents arrive between 8 and 8:30.
Okay, so between 8 and 8:30 was Kelly's expert opinion from all of her years of being a volunteer. I apologize. One of the questions was about the ROTC commissioning ceremony, and I'm not sure if it was on the website, so we'll try to look that up while we're still here online, and if we can't find it while we're online here on the webinar, we'll send that information in the email. So, so I hear that the audio is lagging a little bit, so I hope that it's kind of settled out and you can hear. At least you will be able to see the slides and you'll be able to hear all this information when we send you the link to the recording. So one question is for junior parents. Wow, you are really thinking ahead. I'm so proud of you that there's a junior student's parent who tuned in tonight. So the question is, how soon should you start making reservations for next year? And so the commencement dates are on the website, on that Tulane Grad's website for the next several years. And I think it depends sometimes on the hotel. Some hotels will only allow you they only take reservations up to a year in advance.
Yeah, we negotiate for a calendar year, so you wouldn't be able to start making your reservations as a junior parent until January 2017.
Okay.
If you want to get the Tulane rate through.
Right, if you want the Tulane rate. If you just want a room, I mean, what you could always do is you could always reserve a room, and then once the Tulane rates become available, switch over to the Tulane rates.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, so then one parent said that they didn't get a personalized announcement sample. Can they get one? So it wouldn't have been completely personalized. As they said, they sent you sort of a generic example of the announcement. So,
yes, if you want to call the office tomorrow and talk to Kate, the phone number is 504-862-8064, and we'll make sure a sample gets sent out to you.
Okay. And we actually have the email address for the person who submitted that question,
okay.
So I can make sure that gets to Kelly and Kate. So the question is there a special handicapped entrance or seating? So yes, there is an entrance, and you saw that on the map. And there will also be signage and people directing people as they drive up.
Yes.
But it's really smart to look over that map first so you can kind of get your bearings and know which way to approach the Superdome, so you kind of can do that most efficiently. But then the seating, do you want to tell them a little bit more about the seating than I might have described?
Yeah, the way the seating works is that it's typically at the back of the seating up against the concourse where everybody walks. So we can wheel the person right up to their spot. The only problem with that spot is it's up against the concourse and it's difficult to hear. So if you have somebody who's hard of hearing, but maybe can walk a couple of steps down into the seating area, I would suggest that instead of having them sit in the back for the only, for people that are wheelchair bound and can't make it down a few steps.
Another question was, will there be enough parking available on campus?
Oh my gosh, yes. We have a 6th floor parking garage and it never fills up on commencement day.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there are families who they're staying in a hotel down the quarter, and so they take a cab over from their hotel to the dome, and so different people use different methods to get back and forth. So I don't think you have to feel that every single family is going to be parking on campus.
Let me give this one suggestion, because we ran into this last year with commencement where we had a huge citywide conference that took up most of the rooms, and so parents were calling us panicked, and so we were able to get some rooms out in Metairie. You are not going to be spending a lot of time in that hotel room, so do not stress about having to have this primo hotel room in the French Quarter or downtown, because you're literally not going to be there, because we'll have so many events for you to participate in. So if you want to stay out in Metairie, it's perfectly fine. It's probably easier to get in and out of that hotel than it is to get into the hotels in the French Quarter and downtown. So again, like Penny said, if anybody needs help with hotels, it's what Kate and I do all the time. We answer questions and we give recommendations. So call the office and we're happy to help.
Yeah, and it may be that you'd rather be conveniently located to the airport,
right?
So they can get in and out of town easily, and then know that you're going to almost never be in that room.
Right.
So, so another question was, what time are the guests allowed in? And so I guess that means this to the Superdome. So even as soon as the students have to be there at 8, they'll let guests in to get seated, correct?
Doors open at 7:30.
Okay, so the doors open at 7:30 a.m. to the Superdome. So how are the seats allocated in the Superdome? Can you save seats for family?
We don't allocate seats because it's the Superdome. Well, let me take that back. It really depends upon who the speaker is that's selected. Obviously when it was the Dalai Lama, even though we were in the dome, because so many people wanted to come to the ceremony, we did have to allocate seats or tickets for that. So that answer is really incumbent upon who the guest speaker is.
But that's the only time we've ever done that.
That's the only time. I mean, there was the one year we were in the arena and we had President Clinton and President Bush, where again we had to allocate tickets out, but that was a smaller venue. So we won't be able to really give you a good answer until probably next week, 2 weeks. But normally the speaker is decided on sometime around Grad Fest.
Yeah. So, but I think that you don't have to worry. It's not assigned seating.
No, it's just first come, first serve.
Yeah, first come, first serve. So another reason to get there early. And if you've got more than one person in your party, to have somebody kind of scouting out your seats while the other person's parking the car, or another good reason to take the shuttle so you all walk in together and you don't get separated.
Even though the dome is really big, we don't use the entire Superdome. We configure it for our needs. And so really anywhere you sit, whether you're sitting on the first floor or the second floor, all sight lines are great. And we have big screens. So even if you're not sitting close up to the stage, you'll still be able to see and hear everything.
So one of the other questions is, how many guests are you allowed to bring to the individual school ceremonies?
There's no limit.
And there's no limit. Each of those venues is pretty large for the size of the school, so that they're purposely chosen to accommodate the students and their families and guests. What do you recommend if your student has a double major, like one in liberal arts and one in the engineering school? The ceremonies are in different locations and overlap.
The students usually just choose which one is most important.
Yeah, I think that's you need to have your student kind of think through that, and perhaps if it's one of those situations where they could go to a reception for one, but the ceremony for the other, depending on whether or not they want to introduce you to professors from one school or the other. I think that they'll just need to kind of think through that. I think it might be really exhausting if you were trying to do 3 ceremonies that day, if you had 2 different school graduation ceremonies and the unified one. So just a good time to try to make some choice there. So since there is a gap between finals and graduation, can they check out after finals if they are returning home? And so I think you mean if they check out of their residence hall. So if they are going to be completely checked out of their residence hall and they're really moving out, then yes, they could do that. if they're going to stay with friends off campus, or they're going to go home to you, and then because they've got 5 days in between and they're just going to fly back in with you or drive over when you come for commencement, yes, they could certainly go ahead and check out early. They just wouldn't be able to check out and then still keep living there and then kind of leave, because when they check out, they do have to turn in their keys. Another couple of questions. Do they buy 2 tassels if they're getting 2 diplomas from 2 different schools?
The bookstore will be able to answer that.
The bookstore can help them with that. Do they just decide which they would go to? Say yes. If they've got something that overlaps or too many to go to, then they would have to figure out which one they want to participate in. Did you all find the RTC information?
I am not finding it at all. No.
There was another question about whether or not there is a crawfish boil, and at one point that was on the schedule, but they are actually changing that event, so that is not happening. So while you might have seen that on the website earlier, then that is something that's changing. So there's going to be something else happening that week, but something different from a crawfish boil. And that was usually earlier in the week, mostly before parents really arrive. So it was really something else will be happening that week, but it's mostly for the students themselves, for all the graduating seniors. I think a question was, what time should the students arrive for the science and engineering commencement at Devlin? So if that is not on that list that you saw on the slides, then you would be able to use that link on that page to their more specific information on the website to see that. But usually it's like 45 minutes to an hour before the ceremony starts, so they have time to get lined up.
Every school and college has a commencement coordinator, and they should be communicating specific school college information to your students. If your student's not hearing anything, have them go to their dean's office and seek out the commencement coordinator for their school or college to get that information.
And if you click on those links to the school or college ceremony, and the calendar information at the very bottom line, it says for more information, contact so-and-so, and that person's email address is there, and that's usually their school coordinator for commencement. But it is important that your student is paying attention to the emails that they receive in the last few months here. I know that they're busy. I know they have a lot going on, and the senioritis may be settling in, but there's just so many important boxes to check off that they just don't want to fall down on keeping up with their email. So they're going to get things from their dean's office. They're going to get things from the registrar's office. They're going to get a reminder from Kelly's office to go to Grad Fest. They're going to just, there's a lot of important information, so they do need to keep up with that. So when you check in with them, just kind of ask them how things are going. And now that you've heard about these things, you kind of know things to prompt them about. So let's see if there's anything else. I think, so this is sort of last call for questions. So one question is, do you use the same graduation ticket for Friday night and the Saturday festivities? So no, the wave goodbye party, which happens on Friday night, for which you do have to have a printed ticket, is the only thing for which a printed ticket is necessary. But those are important. Student has to have those in their possession. Parcel them out to those of you in your party. You have to show those at the entrance on either the Gibson side of the quad or the Ferret Street side of the quad to get into wave goodbye. And then for the other things, you don't need that. Now, another thing that you might need to manage if you have someone who's mobility impaired is to think about how you'll manage that person getting into the wave goodbye party. And you may want to think about whether or not this is the best place for that person, depending on perhaps their mobility or their age or something. It's a really great thing, and they don't have to walk around a lot. There are a lot of tables and chairs, so your family might want to escort that person, get them situated at a table, and then you can go to the different food booths and bring something back for them. But if you're not quite sure if it's going to work, I think that's an excellent project to give to your student and ask them to go walk through the quad and pace that off and see if whoever that is in your family who might need some extra attention, if that's kind of a distance that they can manage. You can drop people off at the Gibson Circle, and then that person can come from there, and then, somebody else in your party can, park your car, or if you need to have a cab drop you off, then you could do that either on the Ferret Street side, but probably the best place is the Gibson Circle on St. Charles Avenue. It's a little bit easier to kind of drive up and take your time unloading there than if you try to do that from the Ferret Street side, because that's a street, there's through traffic and it's busy, and there's a light right there. So we'd really recommend doing that drop off on the Gibson Circle in front of Gibson Hall. The Cowan Circle, I'm sorry, that was renamed. The Cowan Circle in front of Gibson Hall on St. Charles Avenue, right across from the streetcar in the park. Parking on campus will be free because it'll be Saturday. On that Friday
It's free as well.
evening, it's free as well, so that's fine. We all kind of know on campus that, Wave Goodbye is taking over campus on that Friday evening. I can't link to the hotels link. We have a hotel, but need to check for family. So I'm not quite sure what that question means. So that might be something that you want to follow up with Kelly and Kate in their office. We'll get your email address and have them follow up with you. So if they are definitely your go-to people if you've got questions about the hotel and the availability of that, and how the travel portal works, all of those things. If the graduating senior has a younger sibling who lives in the residence hall, can that sibling remain in the residence hall until Sunday morning? So that is something that your younger student needs to check out with the housing office. There is a form online, or they've done it in the past online, that there's a request to stay late form. And so sometimes if your student is in the band, or they are one of the special students who help with the ceremonies or something, or if there's a situation like this, then they can make that request. So they really should talk to their RA or look on the Housing and Residence Life website, which is tulane.edu/housing, or they can email housing@tulane.edu, or if they'll look on their website, I think that form may already be there. But sometime, certainly in the next couple of weeks, they'll start to have that information. When the RAs and the staff from housing reach out to the students to explain to them all about checkout at the end of the year, that request to stay late process is mentioned within that whole education that they do for students. So, how's the seating set up for parents in the Superdome? I think Kelly covered that, and that the sight lines are good. Everything is staged. There's certainly an area that they block off, so you're not sitting behind the stage, so you can see everything.
Right. We only use about half of the Superdome, and we have about 15,000 to 20,000 people that attend.
And the Superdome is huge. It's more like 80,000 seats or something, right? So, okay. And can the students take the shuttle to the Superdome? And yes,
definitely.
That's why it starts so early.
The shuttles start running at 7 o'clock.
And somebody else asked who the speaker is, and I'm sorry we don't have that information yet, but since I have all of your email addresses, since you registered for the webinar, as soon as I hear who the speaker is, I'll send you all an update. If you check that website too, you'll see it'll be posted there once it's announced, but I promise that as soon as I know, I'll send you something. Does the science and engineering commencement ceremony end at 5 or 5:30? The slide shows both times, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not quite sure. So when you get the slides, click through that hyperlink to the
5:30 is what the website says.
Oh, the 5:30.
4 to 5:30.
It's 4 to 5:30. So I apologize for that. 4 to 5:30. The Marriotts will only take reservations a full year out. So they don't start taking them until May 2016 for May 2017. I think that's a statement for us, just to update us. Okay. What's expected at the graduation reception? It's kind of a broad question.
They all do different things. I know, like, one school will only do like chocolate dipped strawberries.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of, most of them are kind of light refreshments. Yeah. And I think that it also depends on whether or not you have a pretty decent time for a lunch break. Sometimes they're just trying to give you enough to kind of tide you over because they understand that you've got that kind of awkward break between some of them. But I don't think you should expect that any of them are a full meal, by no means. So light fare. What time should the public health graduate students arrive at Mahalia Jackson Theater? Again, if that's not explicitly stated in the information we have, they may not have updated that yet. I know that some of those separate school graduation coordinators were meeting today to finalize a few of those details. So it'll be on those websites. Usually they do need to be there about an hour ahead of time. It's pretty standard. Okay, if we're taking the 7 a.m. shuttle to the Superdome, where should we park on campus?
You should park in the Diebold parking garage, which is right across the street from the Riley Center, and that's where the shuttle buses pick up.
Yeah, so the shuttles will pick people up in that space between the steps in front of the Riley Center and the corner of the parking garage. Is it difficult to get taxis the morning of graduation if we're staying in the quarter? That might all depend on whether or not there's a convention in town and whether they have a lot of things going on. Right. Of course, sometimes if there's a convention, they're all going to be staying in their convention hotel. But I think the best thing to do in that case is to ask your concierge at the hotel.
Yeah. You will probably have more luck getting a taxi from the hotel to the Superdome than getting the taxi from the Superdome back to wherever it is you need to go.
Another question is, would the handicapped area include visually impaired people? And I do think that it is more about mobility impaired people. And I think that if you've got a more specific question, on the very last slide, there is an email address for the Public Relations Office. Yes. And that is the office that actually coordinates the ceremony. And so I think that would be your contact for asking any questions that we didn't answer. So, and they might be able to tell you whether it would be smarter to sit closer to one of those big screens in case that makes a difference than for them to be seated where the space is accessible for people in wheelchairs. So it really might make a difference depending on what the issue is.
And we do have somebody that signs during commencement as well, right?
Okay, so for hearing impaired folks, there is someone who signs. So again, you may want to be as close to the front as you can, or within a good sight line of one of those really large, they're like Jumbotron kind of screens. Yeah. Okay, I think that, is there a section of seating that you recommend families try to get, but really it's all good, especially because the venue is so large. We don't take up the whole space. There are the big screens, and they really do try to make it a spectacle. So you're going to be able to see things, and you're going to see all kinds of fun things, believe me. So do the students receiving a Master of Architecture degree also receive a bachelor's degree? And no, it is one degree. Oh, somebody informed us that the ROTC commissioning ceremony is May 13th, so that's Friday. Thank you so much. And it's Friday inside the World War II Museum, somebody told us, but they don't know what time. Well, that's fabulous. That's a great venue. So I think that your student's going to get some specific information from, those folks, so pay attention to that. But I'll try to see what else I can find out, and I'll email you if I can. Is there a separate ceremony or event for the honors program? No, not in terms of a separate program for all honors. There, if your student is getting Latin honors or high Latin honors, then they'll receive some information a couple of weeks before that event, and they do have a special ceremony or a reception. It is usually on, I think, sometime on that Thursday or Friday. Mm-hmm. So I think if your student is pursuing that, their best bet is to go ahead and talk to the representatives from that office who are kind of guiding them through that whole process this semester, to find out a little bit more about that. I don't think that it's all been finally planned yet. I know that I reached out to one of the associate deans to ask about that, and so information was up last year. I think it was like Thursday afternoon or Friday.
Yeah, it's not up here now.
So I think that hasn't been finalized quite yet. So I think we've covered all the questions. We are really, really interested in hearing your feedback. So if you have any comments that you want to make, if you want to type those things in now, that's great. Or email me at parents@tulane.edu.
No, back up. There was a question about how does a student volunteer? If you want to email that pr@tulane.edu.
Yeah, if a student wants to volunteer to help with the commencement, then use that email address that's on the last slide, the pr@tulane.edu, and they could get in touch with the people who coordinate the volunteers. But anyway, send us email at parents@tulane.edu. And one of the questions is, will there be additional photos taken when the students walk across the stage?
Yes.
And so, yes, the individual schools have that, have photographers set up to do that.
And that information can be found on the commencement website as well.
Yes. So when you get this PDF, you'll be able to click through that, or you can go to that on your own, just tulane.edu/grads. This is only the second year that we've offered this webinar, but we got great response to it last year. We had over 600 people view the webinar online afterwards, so we hope that it's been helpful, but we're really open to suggestions about how to make this even better for future classes of parents. So we thank you for your participation. We hope you have a wonderful visit and have a great time celebrating this really important milestone and accomplishment with your students and your whole family. So thank you so much.